Okay, so we've talked about service learning best practice, and we've talked about some examples of how we can use service learning to teach more about God's creation and the idea of our sin in society and what we can do to redeem it. But I'm going to add another element to the challenge that I'm going to present you with today, and that is using service learning to develop students into global citizens. So hopefully this framework looks a little bit familiar to you, at least the goals, because they are Christine Bennett's goals of a multicultural curriculum. And so for my service learning, or for my dissertation project, I actually took the 6 goals that Christine Bennett shares, and I tracked the students' progress through the service learning project that my husband did with them. I tracked their progress in these 6 goals. And so just to briefly review them, hopefully you know these well because you just had your midterm recently. The first goal is to develop multiple historical perspectives. So when my husband was teaching economics, he was trying to get the students to see economic policy not through their own privileged viewpoint, not through the viewpoint of their parents who had great wealth, but instead to see economic policy from the view of those who have less monetarily. And so that would be multiple historical perspectives. Cultural consciousness, remember, is an N-word. It's recognizing that you yourself have a culture. And so we looked at how aware the students became of their own privilege through working with senior citizen Latinos. And then third is, did they become interculturally competent? How confident were they to work with the Latinos and feel like they could walk into their home and be a part of their community, a part of their family? This third goal was the one that was the weakest developed over the 3-week service learning project. One student did say that she felt perfectly, she strongly believed that she would fit in perfectly in a Latino community. She took Spanish for several years, so she felt like she could speak the language. She understood their culture and felt very comfortable with them. Again, this was a 10th grader, so whether they were that accurate in their own self-assessment is questionable. But I do believe that even if we can't reach intercultural competence, that it is our job as teachers to give students opportunities to work on strengthening it. And then combating racism, sexism, and other forms of prejudice and discrimination. This definitely was a strong growth area for them because they had grown up with misconceptions about people who crossed over illegally, and when they heard actual stories of people who had done so and under great trial and tribulation, they began to empathize with them and found an emotional connection to the concept of immigration. And then increasing the awareness of the state of the planet and global dynamics, again, is just the idea of what happens in this case in Mexico impacts Houston in regards to more immigrants coming to their city and what that means for them as well. And then lastly, building social action skills. I remember at the beginning of the semester when we were brainstorming these 6 goals in different content areas, only 1 or 2 of the content areas said, oh yeah, I could do all of these. And actually, every single content area could do social action skills, and that's why I'm requiring this project, because this service learning is social action. So you're teaching your students to use your content area to make a positive change and impact in your community or global society. Now, here's another additional challenge that I give to you, and that is to make your service learning project one in which the students are getting to know another group, another cultural, ethnic, racial group, and when they get to know them, whether it's those are the people that they are serving or these are a group that they're working together with to serve another group. So you could have 2 different content areas that come to, or 2 different student groups, maybe from different schools, come together and work on a service project together, and then through that service project they serve another group. But during your service learning project, however it looks, you need to meet all 4 of Gordon Alport's social contact theory. So remember, one aspect of that is that students need enough time working on this project together and working with a group that's very different from themselves to have a chance to really develop deep friendships. So my husband's was 3 weeks. That is okay, but it's not great. And just like your passion projects are only 5 hours, so that's ideally I would have you do 20, but I know that your Grovers are overtaxed for your time. So you really need a sufficient amount of time for them to really connect with the other people on a personal level and care about them. And in fact, my husband's project, one of the students continued going back to the senior citizen home long after we were gone. 1 or 2 of them did on their own. So you want to kind of cultivate those relationships so that they can't just walk away at the end. Secondly, the members of the different ethnic or cultural groups have to share equal status. So if you remember, there was the biology example that I gave you earlier. They had the suburban students teaching the urban students. So do you see, when you have one group teaching the other ethnic group, they're not on equal playing field. It's one is the teacher with the knowledge and one is the student without the knowledge dependent on the teacher, okay? So you really want to try to equalize that relationship. So when I did the service learning project with George Jr., if you recall that example with poetry writing, while my students did teach the George Jr. students how to write poetry, the George Jr. students got to teach the senior citizens. So that one was like a service learning project within a service learning project. But the George Jr. students, their service project, they got to be the teacher. So that when the senior citizens came in, they couldn't look down their noses at the George Jr. students. Instead, they learned from them. And so that was important because we were trying to dispel misconceptions, myths, and racism against the George Jr. students that does exist, especially among the elderly Grove City area. Then we have the groups, the 2 groups working together, or the 2 ethnic groups or racial groups that you're trying to bring together through the service learning project need to be working together to achieve a common goal. So again, make sure that that's happening on equal status so that they're all contributing together. And they, again, I hope you can see how this is building respect. And the more respect that is built, the less likely we have discrimination. Remember that Gordon Alport social contact theory is an attempt to reduce prejudice among all those who are participating. And then lastly, the 4th is the easy one, hopefully, if you have a good attitude, is that the person in the authority, which would be the teacher, or teachers, also the people at the other end of the community, the community liaison that you're working with, they all support this program and want to see prejudice reduction as well. And then also with your service learning project, you're going to work toward one of the biblical truths that we've talked about. Either you are teaching through the service learning project that we are made in God's image, or that we are here to enjoy and to learn more about God's creation, or that we are sharing with students that we are fallen and have the opportunity to be reconciled and that we can participate in that reconciliation. So all of these things are a requirement of the service learning project that you're going to create with other students in the class.